Today, we're going to be going over some wide receiver terms that you need to know. So the first term is going to be from this example here from Jalen Waddle, and that is called getting skinny. So getting skinny is essentially running as tight as you possibly can to the DB to give your quarterback room to fade you or lead you to the sideline, or getting skinny to create more spacing when you have an inside breaking route like a post or an in. Okay, so let's talk about it, right? So getting skinny, like I said, is like you want to almost like squeeze past the defenders. So Jalen Waddle's working in this situation where he has like head up press coverage and he has to run this out route, but obviously his split is generally pretty wide because he's lined up close to the sideline, right? So if what he did was if he gave this move inside to this DB, got this DB to jump, takes this outside release, but he takes this really wide angle and he tries to avoid any type of contact or tries to avoid running tight to this DB, what's going to happen is that when he breaks to his out route, he's going to be right on the sideline. Maybe that DB recovers and he's right on his hip, but that quarterback doesn't have any room. So what we want to do is we want to run hip to hip with this DB. That's what I mean by getting skinny. Now, getting skinny can also help us do something called restack a DB, and we're going to show an example of Stephon Diggs replicating that in a second. But getting skinny is running as tight as we can. We're not always going to stack over the top of the DB, but we run tight so this route looks exactly like how it's drawn up on paper. When somebody draws up an out route, let's say it's a playbook, right? They draw a straight line up and then breaking out. They don't draw it like this, really wide angle and then break out. So a lot of receivers make that mistake. So off of your release, you guys, you have to be consistent with, I want to get hip to hip right past this DB. I want to run right into him so when I break, even if he's right on my hip, this quarterback still has room to lead us. And if we run a quarterback-friendly route and giving him room, whether I'm running an out route, a corner route, a comeback route, or even a fade route, you guys, getting skinny is important on a fade route because if we give this QB room, he can easily make that throw, especially if he is talented. So I'm going to rewind this one more time, and then we're going to play it full speed, and then we're going to get to that Stephon Diggs example. So getting skinny, you guys, is running as tight as you can onto that DB when you're pushing vertical on an outside route or an inside breaking route to give your quarterback space, okay? So now let's look at this example here from Stephon Diggs. He's running a corner route, but he takes an inside release on this corner route. So it's very important that if you were running a corner and you take an inside release, which is absolutely something that you do, you have to restack the DB. Restacking the DB is where he is trailing directly behind you. So like you just like stack over the top of him. See, like right now the DB has us stacked. I want to restack, which means I want to get him trailing behind me. I want to switch places with him. But getting skinny is how we ultimately do that. Both of those phrases, getting skinny and restacking, go hand in hand. Now, before I show this clip full speed, fellas, if you're a wide receiver and you would like to train with us this offseason or a quarterback, we are going to be traveling out to 15 different cities across the U.S. for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver training camps. So, guys, check out that very first link in the description below if you'd like some more information on how you could sign up and attend one of our camps. We'll be coming out to San Francisco, California. That camp is completely sold out, but then we'll be coming out to Orlando, Phoenix, Charlotte. All three of those camps, you guys, literally have 5 spots remaining. Then we'll be coming out to Austin, Texas. That has about 2 spots remaining. So, guys, all of these camps will be sold out within the next week. Then we'll be coming out to Vegas, Seattle, Chicago, Newark, Birmingham, Houston, Boston, Columbus, Boise, and Los Angeles. So, guys, again, want some more information? We'd love to have you to one of our camps. Check out that very first link in the description below. Like I said, we would love to have you there. Let's get back to this example here. So, Diggs is coming off. Closes the space with this DB, but you see how he runs tight to him. You see how he's not afraid of the hand contact because we have to stack. And the only way I'm able to stack is by running tight to the defenders. So being able to get skinny also has to do with your release as well. If we get a DB in this situation, it's very similar to the Jalen Waddle release that we showed, where he's about 2 yards away. They call this, or maybe even more than that, like 3 to 4 yards away. We call this catch technique, right? So catch. You have catch man, and then you have press man, and then obviously you have off man. Catch man, what he's trying to do is he's trying to keep this gap of space between us. What he wants is Diggs to just try to run around, and this DB could cut off his angle so he could get hands, and he remains in the stacked position. So what we have to do is we have to go attack his toes. We have to close the space, get to his toes, give him some type of move, but us closing the space allows us to get skinny and get our left hip past his left hip. So that's what Diggs does. He closes the space, he gives this move, and our mindset to get skinny, you guys, we have to attack this DB's, the hand that is going to prevent my release. So if I'm trying to release to the inside, we have to beat this DB's inside hand. So we close the space, we get on his toes, we give him a move. I want to release to the inside, I want to beat this inside hand. So that's what Diggs is concerned with beating. You see how he swats the hand. He's hip to hip. He's getting right past him, and that is what allows him to get to this stack position. Guys, we should try to stack generally on every single route. Sometimes we can't, and let's say we can't, and this DB's right on our hip. What we could easily do is take this arm and swat him by. You put it on the back of his shoulder, back of his hip, and throw him by. Like it's almost like pushing off without getting a flag for it. But when you push off, you slip under him, and guess what? You still gave the quarterback that room. Obviously, the goal is to stack, but us getting skinny makes it easier to throw him by. And now let's say Diggs had to run an inside breaking route like a post. Us getting skinny, if he's right on my hip, we could lean into him and then break. And that can help us get more separation. So getting skinny and restacking go hand in hand, and that is what those two terms mean anytime you hear myself say it or maybe another receiver coach. All right, so now this is going to be a press release term that a lot of wide receivers maybe don't know, or maybe you hear me say it, maybe you hear other people say it, and you're not too sure what it means, and that's going to be a kick step. So this is not like an offensive line kick step. This is going to be a kick step with your back foot to set up a press release. So what this receiver is doing here is he is running like a quick flat route. Like it's like a quick 1 yard, 2 yard out route, and he has a DB who is in head up press like so, right? So if this DB is in head up press, obviously we want to get him to jump to the inside and then be able to go run your route to the outside. We're not just going to take off and run because that DB is just going to slide with me. He's going to take his kick step. He's going to slide with me. He's going to get hands. I'm not going to get space. I got to make him miss to the inside. So how I make him miss is that with my back foot, I'm going to take something called, I call it a wide step release. Some people call it a jab step. But it's essentially where you take this back foot and you step here to get that DB to jump, make him think we're running a drag, because that's something that we like to run a lot of in the red zone, especially with a condensed split, which means like you're lined up closer to the offensive line. So we want to make it look like a drag. We want to make it look like a quick slant. So when you run a drag, are you running a drag slow? No, you're running fast. So that jab step that you take needs to be fast. And that's why we use this kick step. And you'll see what I mean in a second. So he kicks behind his front foot, steps really wide to the inside, and then you see the amount of separation that he's able to get. That's textbook, you guys. So a lot of you might be asking, well, why wouldn't you just step straight there? I am a firm believer that from this position, because you're in a receiver stance right now, right? You have no momentum generated. This is not a 40-yard dash where we have 5 yards to generate momentum. We have to generate momentum on my very first step. You don't want to do this if you're running a route versus zone coverage. If we're on the 50-yard line and this DB's 7 to 8 yards away and you got to go run a post, just get off the ball and freaking go. But this is a part of the release. This is like a step of the release. So it's not considered a false step. But the reason why we kick behind is to generate explosion. Well, essentially what we're doing is we're trying to explode. We're trying to have some type of twitch before I throw that jab step to the inside. Now, also what it's doing is it's loading up your hips. When you take your back foot and you step behind your front foot like this, you see how his hips load up. What that allows us to do is to throw my hip into the release. When you are facing a DB who is disciplined, and every single NFL DB, you guys, is freaking disciplined. I don't care who your favorite team is. I don't care who your favorite DB is. I don't care how many times they've sold the play. Every NFL DB is disciplined and they have great technique, right? So a disciplined DB is going to be watching our hips. So my release, like, it's more than me just stepping over there. I have to step wide, right? I say step outside the DB's frame. That means stepping outside of his shoulders. So right now his right shoulder is here. You need to step outside of his right shoulder to make it believable that you're going. But it's more than just a step. When you take that step, your hip has to go with your foot to the step. Okay, so that's why you load up your hips in this situation. You load up, and then when you throw that wide step, you see how his hip is able to go. You see how his hips, his shoulders, his head is all going with the foot. That makes it believable that he's running that drag, and that's what gets the DB to jump, you guys. So I'm telling you right now, I know some of you may not believe me. Some of you may think that this is a little bit like, I don't know if I want to try that. Just try it, I'm telling you. And it's not a slow step. It is as quick and as violent as you can. And then you throw into the release. I'm telling you, you're going to feel like you could step further. And I'm telling you, you're going to feel more balanced because your body is actually going to go with the step. We can't just step. It's not just a step on your releases. We are throwing my hip and we are trying to sell like we were trying to cross this DB's face right away. And that is what gets us separation, okay? All right, so now the next term that you are going to hear myself say and a lot of other receiver coaches say is something called a rocker step, okay? So a rocker step is something that you would use at the top of the route. So a lot of you guys are probably familiar with something called like a speed cut or a stick, which is essentially like one cut at the top of the break, right? So like he's running an out route right here, right? And so if he was going to do a one-step break, whether it was a speed cut, which is essentially more of like a rounded cut, or whether it was a stick or a hard cut, he would just cut off of his inside foot and then go. So a rocker step is essentially like two sticks at the top of the break. He's going to step in the direction that he's going first. So he's stepping with his outside foot first. So he's going outside foot, inside foot, then he runs his out. So it's just one extra step on the break to make this defender think that we are running an inside breaking route. So we're trying to sell like I'm doing a post off of just a single stick. So I'm going to play this again one more time, fast motion. So he goes 1-2 at the top of the break and gets that DB to bite. He thinks that it's a post route. He thinks that he's running to the inside. Again, he goes here, left, right. And again, the first step on this rocker step is a short step. It's a hard cut. You were almost stepping down so you can push off of that cut, because when you step down like this, that foot is inside your frame. And when that foot is inside your frame, you get more of a push off of that foot to sell the inside fake, have your hips go. That's what gets the DB to turn, and that's where we get separation. So that's a textbook rocker step right there, you guys. So if you ever hear that terminology, that is ultimately what we mean. Now, obviously, you could use a rocker step on any type of route where you could cut off a 1 foot that is deeper than 5 yards. On like a quick slant or a quick 5-yard out, it's just not needed, you guys, because it's a quick route. We got to go. But if you're running a post route, a corner route, a deep out route, or a dig, that is when I would use it. So if you were going to be doing an inside breaking route, like let's say a post, and you wanted to use that rocker step, you would step with your inside foot first. So that in this case would be his right foot. Then you would go left foot, and then you'd run your post. So it's just that 1-2, you step in the direction that you are going first. That is an easy way that you could think about it, so you ultimately don't get confused.